Hello. Today we're going to look at some of the system extensions. So I'm in the documentation here, and we're going to take a look at how you can add your own custom code onto Action Character. So the first one here, Action Subscribes. So it tells you what class is the base mono, and then gives you two examples here. So if we look up Action Character, we go to the base mono. This is the class you'll override anytime that you want to sub to something when an action begins and when an action ends. So all it does here, right, is it gets action character, it subscribes to these events, and then you can override these. So you have action enabled and action disabled, and then you can do your own custom code there. So let's look at one of our examples, action fx sub. So this is in the base package. And what this does, right? So we inherit action sub, and we do some caching here, just some performance stuff. Let's get this a little bigger. And let's close some of these windows here. Okay. So what we're doing here then is on action enabled. So we're going ahead and override this as the example. And then I said, hey, is this action inside this dictionary that I loaded at the beginning? Well, if so, then we do this coroutine, which just does a little bit of a delay and then creates the FX. An action disabled, nothing happens. So here, just printing out the name of the action that's disabled. So that's example one. And then if we take a look at example two, similar thing, but now it's sound effects. So action SFX sub. Similar stuff here, right? On an action enabled, I overrode that. We're just starting a coroutine that has a delay, so it waits, and then it goes ahead and plays that sound effect. So you could do this right for any of yours. So an example of our own, we could make our own class here. Let's see. Let's go to the base here so I don't save that. Create a C# script. And I don't know. We'll call it like action sub example. So all you do, like those example ones there, is you have your base mono. You now could do action sub. Now it's not gonna, can't allow it unless you're using the action character namespace. Now that we're using it, it's allowed, and then you could just type in override to find those. So there's action disabled, action enabled. So now you have access to character action arguments here. So it gives you things like the instance of the character that was it started the action or ended the action, and then the name of the action. And then you could do whatever with these. So that's the action sub-example. Now this pattern is similar throughout. So if we were to take a look at the hitbox subscribes, same thing. So hitbox hit giver sub, we can go back to action character. I gotta wait for Unity to compile here. Okay. There we go. So we have two, hitbox hit giver sub and hit taker sub. So, hit giver, so this is when you do damage to somebody. So here again, this is the base. You would inherit this, and then you would override hit giver and hit disable. Hit giver enabled, hit giver disabled. There we go. Same thing with hit taker sub. So this will tell you when that hit taker, so that's like your damage box is enabled, and when it's disabled, and the other one would be, your hit giver is enabled and disabled. And you could override those and do whatever then. So you could play some fancy animation or whatever your custom code is. We also can do hit damage and take damage subscribes. So here, hit damage is the base mono. So let's look that up. Here's hit damage. So again, it's an abstract class here. Again, it expects to be on the same object as the actor hitboxes, but doesn't have to be. If you go ahead and assign that field, then it could be wherever. It subscribes to these methods, and these are methods you could subscribe to too if you know a little bit of coding. And then you can override these. Damage collision and damage trigger. So this depends if you're using collision system or you're using the trigger system. We can look inside the hit context collision, and we get all this information then. So you'll have the game object, the attacker. You have the attacking collider. So that's kind of like the hitbox. The part name, collision information, what part was damaged, and then attacker, so what action did they perform while doing this. So you get all that information within here. So an example of that could be the damage FX here, or freeze frame sub. Let's try that one because maybe we haven't seen that before. Freeze frame sub. Okay, so again, and here it's hit damage, and then it overrides damage collision, damage trigger. So what this does here is if you take a look at it, it slows down, right? So if you get hit by something, then it'll do like a little stop frame. One that's a little less code intensive would probably be the damage FX. Let's take a look at that example. Okay, same thing here. Inheriting hit damage. Then we override damage collision and trigger. And here it's just print, so we got hit. And then this is actually collision prefab, so it's actually going ahead and making a collision prefab. It's instantiating that, so whatever's in here. So then you could instantiate some blood or whatever. And then so for the collisions, right, it'll give you the position of where it got hit. And then triggers, it can't do that, right? It doesn't have access to it, so it just gives you the position of the thing that was hit. But of course you can, override and do your own custom code here for damage collision and damage trigger. So we go back in here. All right, so that's the hit damage that you would go ahead and override, and then the last one is the take damage. So this is if something gets like a fist hits someone, and then you want to instantiate something on the fist. So I don't know, like a flash of light or something. Here then is if they take damage. So similar setup here, man. Hit take damage. Again, as a base class you could override. Yeah, you just override these things. Hurt collision and hurt trigger. So, and the example for that one we see here is the FOW knockback. And that's actually used in the base. Do I have it in this scene? In the base package. Yeah, it's used on the placeholders. So an example of a use case here is this FOW knockback. So what this is, let's edit it. It just inherits hit take damage. So that tells us when the thing that was hit. So it tells us when this object was hit. And what I did then is I just overrode the collision and the hurt trigger to do just a rigid body add force. So it just does a simple rigid body add force to the thing. Of course, you could add whatever you want there. That's where you could put your custom code. And that would be it there. So those are a couple of things that you could extend with your own code by either overriding these base monos Or if you know a bit of coding, you could go inside the base mono and then check out what we're subbing to. So in this case, I'm subbing to that for hit collisions and hit triggers, and then you can go ahead and do that with your own custom classes. Okay, so that was just a wrong thing there. Let's go back here to action character. So that's just a quick explainer video on these system extensions, how they're used, some examples, and how you could use them for your own projects. Take care.